Hi folks, Rob Ager here. An unusual topic today, pretty much unrelated to near enough everything I've ever posted on this channel. I'm going to talk about a health condition called acid reflux, which I suffered with for many years, and I ended up curing it with unorthodox methods, and I've been largely free of acid reflux. I would say I cured it at least 95%. I've been largely free of acid reflux for probably a good 5-6 years, which is pretty good. But over the years, I've met many people who suffer from acid reflux, and I tell them about the techniques that I use to overcome mine. And most of the time, they're like, whoa, what? Like they'd never heard of these techniques that I'm going to talk about in this video. And hence, that's why I'm making the video, because I look around online and I see various bits of advice for acid reflux, and I don't find the stuff that I'm going to talk to you about in this video. You might find occasional bits of this advice, but I've not seen all of this advice that I'm going to give all put together in one place. And some of these tips I've not come across at all online. Okay, so acid reflux is, well, it caused me so many problems in that I had difficulty sleeping. I would go to sleep at night, and laying down would cause the acid to sort of go up into my esophagus, and I'd wake up in the middle of the night coughing because stomach acid had gone up and it sort of trickled into my lungs. It made me cough. I used to get that quite a lot, and of course the disturbed sleep from it. Used to get a lot of stomach pains. I had to limit what kinds of things that I could eat because certain foods would just kick me off really bad. And alcohol, I had to quit alcohol completely for at least 2 years. Because the acid reflux was so bad. I mean, I don't drink beers. I've never really been a beer drinker. I've always been a spirit drinker. And any spirits, especially my favourite, which was whiskey, I'd only have to have one shot, bam, stomach kicked off. And so that had a really bad effect on my social life. So yeah, it was a really, really negative thing that affected me for years. Now, I went through my GP, I went to various specialists to try and get this problem sorted out, went to specialists in hospitals, and I was given the usual treatments, which is typically antacid stomach drugs, such as lansoprazole, and I think there was one called omesoprole. I can't remember the exact names, but these drugs did not work for me. They would achieve a very short-term result, and that was it. It would wear off after a while. Maybe I'd get a week or two of freedom from the pain, and then the drugs would stop working, and I never was able to figure out why. But one thing that the doctors did figure out was that I had a stomach infection called Helicobacter pylori. This is a bacteria that is pretty severe. A lot of people have it. Some people it doesn't seem to cause them any problems. But for those who it does cause problems for, H. pylori, as it's more commonly known, can cause stomach ulcers. It causes acid reflux, causes heartburn and all the rest of it. It's a pretty bad infection to have. And you can be given a course of antibiotics to try and get rid of it. And that can work to an extent, but I never found that this infection was properly cured via that method. And so I had to experiment for years. I was trying out different ways of dieting, see if my diet could affect this thing. And dieting certainly helps with the acid reflux and general stomach health. But there was one thing that I eventually came across. Somebody pointed me to a newspaper article about a herbal remedy called mastika, also known as mastic gum. Mastic gum, M-A-S-T-I-C, mastic gum. That's what it's most commonly known as online. And there's a capsule form with the powdered version inside called mastika, M-A-S-T-I-K-A. Okay, so doing a little bit of reading up on this. Mastic gum has been used in controlled experiments to see whether it helps get rid of the H. pylori bacteria infection. And it gets results. There are published science papers out there that talk about this. But I didn't use the mastic gum, the stuff that you chew. I used the capsules which had the mastic powder in it, the mastika. And I found that got a really, really good result. I haven't found any scientific studies using the powdered version, but I was able to buy it in a health food shop, and apparently mastika or mastic gum comes from the pistachio plant, and it's been used for thousands of years, according to online reports. Been used by the Romans and people dating back over the centuries, and it's been renowned for its stomach health properties. Its ability to keep a healthy stomach. Okay, so I started using this stuff, and on the bottle it said to use 4 capsules a day. Just take 4 capsules, like say at night, and then don't take any more till 24 hours later. And even with just doing it at that level, I was able to get a good result. My stomach pains started to go away, my acid reflux started to disappear. But after a while, a few weeks of this, I found that there was a consistent problem with it for me, which was that I would take the 4 capsules, I would feel better for about maybe 12 hours, and then my stomach would start to get bad as I got further into that 24-hour post-capsule time frame. And then I'd be waiting, all right, I want to take my other 4 tablets, my other 4 capsules, and I've got to wait until 24 hours later. So I was following the label on the instructions very strictly. So I read online about whether there are any toxicity problems or anything associated with mastica, and whether there's any particular health problems that can be caused if you take more than the 4 capsules that it says on the bottle. And I couldn't find any information anywhere saying that anybody had had any problems from the mastica, or that there was a specific amount beyond which you will start getting health problems from this herbal remedy. And so I decided to take the risk. I'm not advising you to do this. This is something I personally did. If you want to take the risk of doing this, that's entirely up to you. If you want to speak to your GP and ask them whether it's okay to try this, then that's fine, and I would never advise you to go against your GP's advice. I'm just telling you how I sorted this out. I had to sort out the Helicobacter infection in order to get the acid reflux. So there was no other way. As long as that infection was there, I could not sort it out. And so with this 24-hour thing, the problem that I had with the capsules, I decided to start taking 4 capsules every 8 hours instead. And that started to get a much better result, a more consistent freedom from pain, consistent freedom from acid reflux. But I also started to do something that's kind of unusual but made sense to me. I started taking the powder out the capsules on some of the times that I would take the dose. Take the powder out the capsules and just drink the powder straight with some water. And the reason I did that is because I wasn't sure whether the H. pylori bacteria only lives in the stomach area, or whether it can also live in the esophagus and thrive there. Because I thought if you're just taking the capsules and you're swallowing it with water, the coating of the capsules needs to break down before the mastica can be freed into your body. And if that doesn't happen until the capsules are way down in the stomach, then you could have a lot of H. pylori bacteria still there in the esophagus. So that's why I was taking the powder out of the capsules and just drinking it with water. And I don't know if that contributed, but overall, this once every 8 hours technique with the mastica killed the infection for me. And I didn't have to carry on taking the mastica long term. I think I took it for about 4 to 6 weeks, every 8 hours every day. And eventually my stomach felt so good, and I was so much more free to eat other things, that I decided, well, let's see what happens if I stop taking the mastica, because I don't want to be paying up for these capsules all the time. So I stopped taking them, and I was fine. And it seems to me that this did actually cure the Helicobacter infection, or it lessened it to a degree where it was negligible, and it's never really bounced back since. Now, the other side of this cure was a change in lifestyle, especially eating habits, in order to heal my esophagus. Because when you've been getting acid reflux over and over and over again, I think it injures the esophagus, and you end up with sort of like chronic injuries to the esophagus that can be flared up. Certain foods that I ate, if I ever ate them, would would flare up my esophagus really badly very quickly. One of them was cheddar cheese, so I couldn't eat pizza. If I ate like 3 slices of pizza, I could end up with an absolutely terrible stomach pain from it. So yeah, in order to heal the esophagus, it's kind of difficult because every day we eat, and if you're not eating the right things and you're eating things that flare up your esophagus and you're not eating in the right way, which we'll get into soon, you can cause continuous ongoing mild injuries to your esophagus via those foods that you're eating, and it prevents it from healing. It's almost like having a broken leg and it never heals because you keep walking around on it. So how do you solve this problem of healing the esophagus even though you have to eat all the time and get food to go through there? Well, there's a whole bunch of things that I did, and one of them was that I cut out all of the things that typically would cause a flare-up of my esophagus. And I've wrote down a bit of a list here of some of these things. So there's quite a few things that used to kick me off. And most of these are things that I can have now, and they don't cause me too much of a problem. So number one was alcohol, especially spirits. That used to kick me off quite a lot. I had to quit alcohol for quite a while. I mean, I was forced to quit alcohol anyway by the infection. But once I used the mastika to get rid of the infection, I decided to stay off the alcohol for a long period and not drink any alcohol at all while I was trying to heal the esophagus. Another key one was refined sugar products. Any kind of chocolate, ice cream, anything like that. Just get rid of that, as much of it as you can. I would say cut it down by 90% if you can, or even 100%. Another one was flour products. I always found that bread products were terrible for me anyway. If I ate a lot of bread, I would start to get stomach pains. Not necessarily acid reflux, but I think flour products are generally pretty bad for the stomach. At least they were for me. White rice was another one. For some reason, white rice would often cause a flare-up. I don't know exactly why that was. Maybe it was the excessive starchiness or carbohydrates or something. But you pay attention to what actually causes a reaction rather than the theoretical side of what should cause a reaction. Because I think everyone's stomach is unique. Everyone's got their own unique stomach biome, as they say. And so certain foods will cause problems for you, other ones for me. So you've got to identify those and get them out of your diet for a while. As I mentioned earlier, cheddar cheese and general dairy products, any milk, anything like that. Red meat, I cut way down on that, especially the really tough, difficult to digest red meats. Excessively salty foods, and particularly hot, spicy foods. All of these things could cause a flare-up for me. And so after I used the mastika, I cut out pretty much all of these things. I would say probably, I cut them all down by at least 90% for, say, I don't know, it must have been 3 to 6 months. And then I gradually reintroduced them. But I don't think I ever ended up going back to eating them to the levels that I used to, because there's all kinds of other health benefits that can be gotten by cutting these kinds of things out of your diet. So a lot of these things, whether you've got a Helicobacter infection or not, whether you've got acid reflux or not, I would recommend you get rid of those things out of your diet for the most part. The next one is to replace those foods with the healthy ones, because you've got to eat something. So a hell of a lot of vegetables is good. Brown rice, I don't know why, but brown rice was fantastic for me. It didn't cause the kinds of flare-ups that the white rice did. I don't know what it is, but brown rice is much better. But brown rice is very boring to eat. It does fill you up, but it's boring to eat. But I'll be talking in a minute about ways that you can make brown rice really tasty. Another one that I've always found helps my stomach a lot is oily fish, especially salmon, smoked salmon, mackerel, things like that. And of course, baked potatoes, very healthy. And you can eat that with all kinds of things as well. So those are some really good foods that I use on a regular basis and still use today to maintain good stomach health. But I found that those things didn't cause a flare-up, so when I was trying to heal the esophagus, they helped. Next up, I've put this separately because it's part of healthy eating, but it's more medicinal. And that is to have lots and lots of healthy herbs and spices in your foods. And the ones that helped me a lot was garlic, ginger, turmeric, cumin, and salad rocket. Right, salad rocket, the long leafy stuff that you often get with the salads. It's salad rocket is actually really good. Generally makes my stomach feel well, but particularly, this is important, salad rocket has been shown in scientific studies with I think it was rats or mice, I can't remember which, from the studies that I looked at. Salad rocket helps fight the Helicobacter pylori infection. So if you don't want to take that mastika stuff, try including lots and lots of salad rocket in your diet to kill off that infection. It may not work as well as the mastika, it may work better for you, I don't know, but it's something you can try, and it's not going to cause you any problems. You can probably eat all of the salad rocket that you want. Oh, a couple of other foods there that I meant to add a minute ago. Broccoli and cabbage, I've generally found, make my stomach feel really good and definitely don't cause flare-ups. Okay, so all those herbs and spices, medicinal, good for your general health, good for your immune system and all the rest of it. So those are great. Okay, this next one is something that I've not heard in any of the literature about dealing with acid reflux. And that is to let your meals and your drinks cool down to a lukewarm level before you take them in. And I always had this thing where if I sat down with a bunch of people to eat a meal, and the meals would put in front of us, and the meals were really temperature hot, I'd just be wolfing the stuff down right away. And I could feel it burning me a little bit, but it wouldn't really bother me. But I think it caused an ongoing injury to my esophagus. Almost like mild burn injuries from these hot meals that I was having and hot drinks. And I mention it because I had that problem, but also I've talked to a lot of people who have acid reflux about how they eat their meals and have their drinks, and they also say, many of them have told me, that they have a habit of eating their meals really hot and drinking the drinks really hot. So I'm wondering if this is a very common problem with acid reflux. So I started letting my meals cool down for at least 5 minutes before I'd start eating them. And I found that by doing this, I would say probably over the course of a few weeks, I felt an improvement in my stomach just from that alone. Okay, so the next one after this, I think this is the last one on my list. Let's have a look. Yes, this is something else equally important, I think, compared to the temperatures of the meals. And this is something I've also not really heard talked about much in the literature on acid reflux problems. And that is to put less pressure on the esophagus, physical pressure. And this is done by eating your meals more slowly and eating smaller meals. I had a habit of, I could go all day without eating, and then suddenly I would eat a huge meal, and then my stomach would be really bloated, and then that could cause a bit of an acid reflux response. But also the speed at which you eat your food. I tended to wolf down my food really fast, and I think that would cause a pressure. So, well, I know it caused a pressure because sometimes I would feel a little bit of heartburn. What I often described as heartburn was pressure on the esophagus because I was eating my food fast enough that my esophagus was getting crammed up, and it was having to try and shove all this food down into the stomach. And so, yeah, I mean, taking the time to eat my meals more slowly, swallow your food, and then wait for at least 30 seconds before you take another spoon or fork full of food. And another aspect of it was making sure to chew the food properly, because these kinds of things sound like common sense, but if you're not aware of them, these things can cause you huge problems for years. And because you don't know that you've got these bad habits with your eating, it can mean that you never ever resolve this problem. So yeah, taking the time to chew your food so it's properly mushed up and it's not therefore chunky when it's going down, and basically you turn the food into a very consistent paste so that it slides down the esophagus a lot easier and causes less pressure, and you eat more slowly, and also eating smaller meals so you don't overfill your stomach. Something I found that was always a big problem, if I ate spicy food, sometimes I could eat a small amount of spicy food and I would get away with it. But if I ate a large meal of spicy food, bam, massive acid reflux response. So maybe that's a key issue. The types of foods that cause you a flare-up, maybe you can eat them in small portions, but don't eat them in large portions. So yeah, that's a really important one, to allow your esophagus to heal, is to lessen the pressure on it. Okay, so I mean, all of these things together worked well for me, but if I tried any of these techniques just on their own, they probably wouldn't have made a huge difference. I would say the mastica one was the one that made the most difference on its own. But often in life, health problems or even psychological problems, usually there's not, when there's a persistent problem, there isn't usually a single cause. A persistent problem that seems to come back no matter how many times you do different things to try and fix it. It's often that there are multiple causes that are contributing to the problem, as is the case with my acid reflux. And in order to solve the problem, you can't just identify a single issue and go, I'm going to address that and that will fix the problem. You need to put multiple solutions in place at the same time in order to get a really good result. So I'll just recap it there. Okay, so we had the mastica. For those of you who have a H. pylori bacteria infection, if you don't know whether you've got it and you've got acid reflux, go to your doctor and ask them to get you that test. Because if you've got that infection, then you need to get rid of it. Okay, so that was the first one, was to cure that with mastica, and also the salad rocket was very good for fighting off that infection. The second one was to take all of the foods that cause acid reflux flare-ups for you and get them out of your diet, at least for a few months while you're letting that esophagus heal up. And then later on you can go back. And of course replace those things with the healthy foods, like I said, brown rice, oily fish, baked potatoes, vegetables, especially broccoli and cabbage worked well for me. Get lots of healthy herbs and spices into your diet, and let your meals and drinks cool down to a lukewarm level before you have them, and be careful about very, very cold drinks and cold meals. And of course lessen the pressure on the esophagus by having smaller meals, eating slowly and chewing carefully. I'll just add one at the end there, which is that something I found really good that combines a few of those things was to have lots of homemade soups, just using vegetables and herbs and spices. It was a good way of getting the herbs and spices into the system, and getting the healthy vegetables in there as well. But also, because you're making it as a soup, it's not going to put pressure on the esophagus. It's already half digested by the fact that it's broken down to that level. So yeah, healthy homemade herbs and soups is good. So look around online for healthy recipes for homemade soups. You can just make a huge pan of it, take you half an hour, and then you can just eat that over the course of a few days. Helped me a great deal to do that on a regular basis. So as a result of all of these techniques that are used, I got to a point where now I'm able to, well, for many years, I've been able to eat spicy foods. I eat spicy food almost every day of my life now, because I find spicy food helps with my health in other ways. It seems to help my immune system for some reason. So I'm able to do that. I could, if I wanted, start drinking alcohol again. There's been some times over the years where I've gone back and had a few drinks. Didn't cause me hardly any problems. In fact, a lot of the time, I didn't even think about acid reflux. I just went ahead and had my drinks and I was fine. But I've gotten out of the habit of drinking alcohol generally for other reasons, which I won't go into because it's a separate issue. But yeah, acid reflux is barely ever a problem for me now. And I'm able to eat way more things than I used to eat. There's still a few things that make my stomach feel bad, but I just avoid those. The cheddar cheese, still I avoid that, and the alcohol. And for some reason, red wine, I have a terrible reaction to that, but I think it's an allergic thing. So yeah, those are my tips and tricks, the ones that I used to cure my Helicobacter infection and to sort out my acid reflux. Whether these things work for you, I don't know. I'm just one sample person who this has worked for. But I'm hoping that some of you people will benefit from some of these ideas. Even if you just took 2 or 3 of these things that I've described and you put them into place, you might be able to have a huge impact to help yourself with the acid reflux. So yeah, I hope this helps you. If you know other people who've got acid reflux, point them to this video. Okay, This is Rob Ager signing off. Take it easy, folks. Bye bye.